Hey, Composing Gloves here, and today we're going to be talking about creating stereo images or stereo widening effects using the Haas Effect and phase shifts. So let's dive into this. I'm wearing a hat, and here we go. So I'm going to be using the Stereo Shaper plugin, but there are plenty of other ones. Melda Audio uses this. Depending on the methods they use, they may require you to have an already stereo thing. Others don't. This one comes with a matrix allowing you to do some cool things. All we care about is the delay and the phase offset. And we can use this to do various other nifty things, especially when we're trying to get mid-side and stuff like that. We'll talk about that stuff later. But there are various plugins that will allow you to do things along this line. For example, we could pull open the Fruity Delay 2. And it's got the ability to put an offset or a delay between the left and the right speaker. And if we do this in the Haas Effect territory, or the Haas Effect timing area, whatever you want to call it, we will get we'll get a stereo widening effect. And that's talked about, the Haas Effect specifically is talked about in the critical listening series. If you're like, what's the Haas Effect? So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at how this thing works. So we're going to play a sound, and I've got just a sine tone. And right now, the matrix is not doing anything. It's just passing the signal through. That's our glorious sound, right? It's mono. And what we're going to do is we're going to introduce a delay between the left and the right speaker. So if we do this, suddenly we have a stereo image. Suddenly we're like, whoa, that sounds like it's, somewhere over there, sort of, if we were to delay it the other way. Now, this is a very, very large delay, so we're not in the Haas Effect territory. We can audibly hear the delay. So if you want to use that as sort of an effect, that's great, but I want to stay within a range that gives me a stereo image, which is going to be somewhere 20 milliseconds and below. I find that with sounds like this, even 15 is pretty noticeable. But you see, we have a timing difference. What you want to be careful about is some people use this to get really wide vocals, but if you then sum this back down to mono, there's a timing difference between your speakers, which means there's going to be a phase problem. You're going to have phasery type issues. Comb filtering will take place when you put it back together, and that may make your vocals sound really dumb, sound like there's a phaser on it. It's going to be static phasing, so it might not sound quite like a phaser that when you think of a phaser, but it's not gonna sound like you intended it to in mono, that's for sure. So you want to do mono checks. So yeah, because there's only one speaker, not two, so you could have an issue. So you want to be careful when using this. Don't get too crazy. But if you just do a mono check before you render out your song, you'll be fine. So just slap it in mono and go ahead and do that. And we looked at doing that when we were looking at mixing a mono in the video where we were talking about balance. So okay. Next up, we have a phase difference. So we know we have a timing difference. It's pretty simple. What's this phase one about? Well, the phase difference, what it does is it uses a filter to create phase shifts in the signal. So it'll actually mess with the phase in one channel. Now you've got a difference in phase in one channel from the other. And now you can create a stereo widening image because there's a difference in the left and right, and your ear hears that. This one's kind of weird because you're like, where is it? Because it's like only certain frequencies, but it's the same signal. So check it out. So you can hear that it's changing position, spatial position, but it's kind of unusual because it's only some frequencies. Other frequencies are left alone. So this makes it so that it's a little more mono compatible. And I like to use these sorts of effects in my mixes. And what I'll do is I'll combine them. Maybe I'll do some phase shift and a small delay shift. Maybe I'll shift it the other way. And you can get all sorts of images. You see how it sort of spreads out to the sides. And this is really cool because now I can have my kick sitting, bam, right there in the middle, and my snare, and it's completely out of the way. Something else I like to do is I'll turn these things on with the cautions that I mentioned earlier, and then I will automate it on and off. So I'll be like, oh, off here and on here. We can even do that right now. And I'll do this to make it more interesting. So maybe my drop just hit, and right here is where like my drop is. And I want this to be way wider. So I'm going to make this like freaking wide. Turn the stereo shaper on. And if we play it. And so suddenly like the space is opened up. So I'll do stuff like that. Maybe I'll dynamically bring it from wide down to mono right there. Or maybe I'll just do this to be interesting, or something happens in the mix where a different phase relationship would be nice so that I can create more rooms. So this is a great alternative to panning, because in panning, you're sort of committing to one side, versus here it's like, oh, it's still on both sides, but it like fits in the mix differently, and it's not reverb. Technically it's delay and phasing, but it's like not in the same way. And they also have some great effects here. So we have like just old, these are just different static delay moves, phase differences and stuff. And then like I like to use the stereo rise all the time because these allow me to, I just know what they sound like. So if I'm like, oh, I want this kind of a phase relationship, I'll grab a particular set of delay. I'll come in here every now and then and change them, but I very rarely do. I quite like these three already. But as you can see, you can just move them around. Now, you might be going, what's this matrix for? Well, this matrix allows us to do some interesting things with level and mid-side splitting, all sorts of cool things. We're not going to deal with it right now. We'll talk about mid-side splitting later. But you can set this up. You don't have to use this plugin to set it up, but you can. It's a very, very handy dandy way because they have these nice mixing presets that allow you to do some neat stuff. And it's also kind of useful if like you've been handed a master that needs to be demixed a little bit. But anyways, if you have any questions, let me know. Subscribe, support me on Patreon, and have a blessed day.